Welcome to Luminosity Wellness Radio. Thank you for tuning in this week. I am your co-host, Jeff Rennell, and I have my other co-host, Josh Carpenter, with me, Mr. Blue.
Gosh, hello.
And unfortunately, our other co-host, Christine Essex, is not with us here today, but our thoughts are out to her and her family.
Yes, yes.
Today we have our guest with us. Her name is Andrea
Giglin.
Giglin?
Okay, wait a minute, guys. Okay, wait. Andrea Giglin. There you go.
Sorry about that. I'm great at butchering words, so I really apologize.
Well, the other thing is my husband's first wife was Andrea.
Oh.
But it's okay.
All right. Well, I definitely apologize. She's also known as Dr. Success. She is the author of the Don't Die brand of inspirational books. The latest one is Don't Die Waiting to Be Brave. She also has a workshop that she does, What Are You Waiting For workshops. And you've also been on the Rachel Ray Show.
I have.
Also part of the TEDx UNLV Speaks, right?
I was back in 2013. I was part of that inaugural TEDx that they did.
Wonderful, and so much more. I mean, there was so much stuff to pull from that you've done. It's just absolutely amazing. So thank you for being here today.
Quite a media presence,
indeed.
You.
Yes.
Thank you.
So,
why don't we start from the beginning, which is the passion for this? Where did this all begin for you? I believe would be the first question to ask.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. It took me actually a number of years of being in the industry of helping people in personal development and human development to realize that the origins, and I speak about it in my most recent book, Don't Die Waiting to Be Brave. It's actually the last story. I was brought up in a family where an uncle had very severe Down syndrome. And fast forward 30 or 40 years, and I realized that things that I watched my family do with this man who was born in 1930, who would have normally been institutionalized. And I realized that the potential of the human mind, no matter what condition it is in, is beyond our ability to understand. And I just decided that I wanted to side with that potential.
Wonderful.
Wow, that's amazing. And so where did your beginning steps go from there? I know a lot of speakers will talk about, sometimes how they mistakenly get into the industry or where their roots started from. Starting a business is a very, very tough thing. So
and that's what I have to say, that I will never identify myself as a speaker. I will always identify myself as a business person. And I came into the field of human development because I loved business. My first one was a Haagen-Dazs ice cream store in Reno, Nevada. And one of the things that I did having that store was I hired all junior achievement kids, because I knew that instinctively they were people who cared about their future, even though they were adolescents. And we all have been adolescents. Generally, adolescents aren't the most concerned about their future.
So true.
And kids who went into junior achievement had that quality. So from the very first time that I owned a business, I started out seeking out those who already had a love for themselves and where they were going to go in their life.
Wow.
That's my natural attraction. I am not the person who will get you out of the gutter. I know that about me. I'm the person that once you begin to see the possibility of yourself within yourself, I can show you that light better than most.
That's awesome, and I do see you in the media as being a businesswoman. You are actually a hotel owner, and you also had helped in training CEOs or advising CEOs.
Okay, so my career has actually been two paths, but those paths have continually crossed over. I have since my inception been a consultant. I have, since my inception into adulthood, owned businesses. And many times I will use the same skills that I have within the business community, owning my own businesses, and take them back out with my degrees in psychology to help others. And so what I say of my work is that all the different areas that I work in are based in the same love and the same strengths and knowledge, but the audiences shift according to which parts of the information they need.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's wonderful. So we're going to talk today a little bit about your book that you have, Don't Die Waiting to Be Brave.
It's actually a series of books.
It is. And you know, I would really, I know that if you've been tracking me online, you probably came across, and I'm not sure how many years ago I did this, probably 5-6 years ago, I wrote one of my slightly more controversial articles where I basically said that, you know, self-help is a pack of dog ding. I know that it's impressive, and I know that I use clean language, but basically anyone who knows me knows that I am critical constructively of the self-help industry. Not that it does not inspire people, not that there are not phenomenal speakers giving out really good information, but as an industry, where I care the most is the point at which the individual takes the information and applies it to their life. We fall down as an industry. That's why I have spent my time being educated as deeply as possible in psychology, and specifically the positive psychology, and apply what those researchers do to the application of daily success and life success and business success. So my Don't Die series really came out of my understanding that people buy a lot of self-help books, but rarely do they read them. So I designed a book that could be read in less than an hour, with the full intention that that should leave you enough time to at least consider taking an action or thinking about the next action you could take.
And if it's in your head and it's sitting there bubbling, then chances are most likely they're to take
I
that.
use true stories of things that have happened to people, places in my life. And this last one ended up being really about my life in a way that I didn't expect. But I need others to see themselves in whoever's story is being told in a book.
Yeah. So with this book series, you're out and doing signings and really getting the word out on this. Is that correct?
I have a lot coming down the pipeline, but one local to Las Vegas is the Writer's Block on February 27th from 5 to 7 p.m. I also have made a commitment to myself to do quarterly workshops, public workshops. They are not for everyone. They're for people who really are willing to take a next action. And the reason I say that is the people who join together in my rooms are a small group. Anywhere from 8 to 12 to 16 will end up showing up on any given day. And they all have one quality in common. Yeah. Being successful matters to them.
Yeah.
And they want to be around other people who also value that.
I think that's great. When I started I call it self-development instead of self-help, just personal preference. Yep. But when I started really getting into self-development and finding out who my mentors were and the information that helped guide me where I want to go, and some of that when I was reading the books, there wasn't an area to take that action afterwards. And here you're actually doing it to where you're providing an outlet for them to go and get a workshop done at the same time to go hand in hand. So with what they read about in the books is also what would take place in the workshops, I'm guessing?
I have developed 4 base Don't Die principles. And they're they are self-help adages that I've picked up through all the years of doing this work. And what I found is that in any given order, these 4 principles are the things that if you begin to tell your story from that perspective, you can then transform the story to the next action you can take. I really am as basic as it can get, and this basic work has to be done moment by moment, day by day, in order to add up to a true life where you are successful.
And would you say that beginning is not only in taking the action, but making the choice?
Correct. All of life is a choice. Right. Most of us choose to do nothing because we are too afraid we're going to fail. we don't think about the fact that taking no action is an automatic failure. It's like, how does that work? You know, give me a shot. Let me fail and get back up. But taking no shot at all is just too boring.
Yeah.
And I've lost lots of money trying to do that.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
I've put my money where my mouth is.
Oh, definitely. With business owners, and I'm sure a lot of business owners can relate, there are areas where when we're developing in our business and we're learning, there's areas where we fall, we get back up. I mean, business in a sense is like life, and I think those two hold so closely together, and if they're not balanced, then that's where you start dealing with the problems.
Yes. In the last few years, and again, it's in my most recent book, Don't Die Waiting to Be Brave, where I talk about how marriage and business have so much in common. I got so sick over the years of listening to female friends tell me about these various cast of characters they were dating. And I said, you know, I don't mean to be cruel, but if you judge a partner the way you do a business partner, how do they handle finances? When you get into a problem, do they lawyer up or do they mediate?
So true.
You know, there are some characteristics that if you look business, and I will tell you that this came at the evolution of some of my own spiritual growth in the 80s when I was in school and I was learning that there was, now I was in school in California, so we were learning that churches were being replaced by business, that the reason business ethics was so critical to our country was if we did not raise up the ethical nature where people were spending 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, we were going to be in terrible trouble because 1 hour someplace else was never going to override it. Yeah. And so I became committed to doing the best I could, and I fail miserably at it. You know, don't think I don't lie. I do. I do everything I try to teach others not to do, but I constantly am against, do I want to be a hypocrite or do I want to try harder the next time?
Exactly.
And that's why I do the work. I keep myself clean doing it.
So, I mean, you, in essence, putting it into action and living the experience is how you're able to help people so well.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that.
Thank you.
Is it break time, Jeffrey? I see you giving us the look over there. Do we need to give our sponsors a shout out?
I think this is probably a great time to take a break really quick. So you're listening to Luminosity Wellness Radio. We're going to take a quick break for our sponsors.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Luminosity Wellness Radio. We're here with Andrea. We were talking about the book and also the workshop that you have coming up with the Luminosity Wellness Center.
Correct.
Do you mind telling us a little bit about what people can look for in your workshop and what they can expect?
Sure. Well, first I'd like to talk a little bit why I chose the Luminosity Center.
Please.
Okay. So I've been looking for a space. I've had the privilege of holding my workshops in several different spaces. One of them that I love, the Springs Preserve, is an ideal space, just not the best location for a host of different reasons. And someone told me about the Luminosity Center. In fact, it was Gail Hancock, the woman who is now running TEDx UNLV for 2016.
That's
Wonderful.
the connection.
That's the connection. And so I went over to see your center, and it felt good. I loved the space. I thought about how people would respond when they were being asked to think about themselves, think about their next level of success, think about who they want to show up as next. And environment is quite critical to that. So I want to compliment you. You've really created a very nice space, and I look forward to holding this first workshop there on January 30th. Now, so my workshops are usually 6 hours long. Because it's a Saturday, this one is from 9:30 to 3:30. Know that everyone who comes together is business-oriented at one level, as I said, success-oriented. So when they come together, what does not change is the information I house. My knowledge, my experience, that's the given. The way I write my books. My 4 principles are what guides the day. Change your awareness and your perspective will change. You teach what you need to learn. You can make excuses or you can attain your goals, but you can't do both. Experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. Those are the hallmarks of how I invite whoever shows up in that room to tell a story. Now, when I did my workshop back in May, the focus was, what one goal do you want to do in the next 90 days? This time, it is not only that you bring your excuse and your goal, but what habit. Because what we know in the research of goal setting is not that people are, especially successful people, it's not that we don't set goals. We set all sorts of goals. What we don't spend much time doing is looking at what habits block us. What is it about our daily patterns, our weekly patterns, our patterns in general, that are actually stopping us from achieving the goal that we think is so important? And once we examine that, you can then, you went back, let's go back to that word choice.
Yes.
You can go back and make a choice. Am I willing to adjust this habit to achieve this goal?
Linkin
Nice.
Park has a song called Breaking the Habit, and really when we get into routines and stuff, that's kind of similar what we're trying to do, is we're trying to break a routine or a habit that allows us to keep doing a lot of what we're continuously getting. Is that
Yep.
correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and sometimes we have to just re-identify that habit as well, too, because sometimes it happens so slowly and naturally we don't even realize we get into a habit.
You know, in management philosophy, going back decades, there was this analogy about how a frog gets put in a pot of water, and the water is lukewarm, and the frog is quite happy. And gradually, they turn the heat up on the frog. And in no time, the frog is dead without ever knowing it.
Yep.
That's what we do in our daily lives. Between all of our multiple responsibilities, our multiple ways of getting information, our multiple everythings, we become immune when things are actually changing because we're moving so quickly in so many different directions. When you come together for a day, what you're saying is, oh, for 6 hours, whatever is going on out there doesn't matter. It's not going to interfere, because me as a facilitator, my role is to not allow it to interfere. And the only thing you get to focus on is yourself and hearing what the other people in the room are saying are blocks to them. And the cool thing about group work in a safe environment like that is you will think you don't know what's blocking you. I don't know what habit I have to change. Yeah, let's talk.
Self-talk. It's your self-talk, right?
Yeah, let's start there. But what ends up happening is you'll hear someone else talk about a habit they want to change, such as, I come home every night with great intentions. I'm going to work on my business plan for my private business. And when I get home, I'm kind of tired, so I pour a glass of wine. It's one little glass of wine.
But every day.
And you got that little edge off. And once the edge is off, well, then the business plan doesn't look nearly as important to complete. And the next day you start the cycle all day again.
Yep.
In psychology, we have a terminology called fatigue resilience. I'm sorry, I have said that incorrectly. It is resilience fatigue. The reason we do not achieve goals is not because we lack willpower. It is because we literally have to make so many decisions in the course of any given day. Like, if you would just account the amount of minute decisions you make from the time you get up to the time you get in your car to go to your first meeting, you would be shocked. Well, add 8 hours to that, and your resolve that when I come home today, I'm going to work on that business plan and not have that glass of wine. Well, no. That's like one decision too many.
Yeah.
Because you're tired. You have made so many decisions, tiny, tiny little decisions. God forbid there's a big one. Tiny, tiny little ones that by the time you get to the space. So one of the things that we help guide you look at the time in your day. When are you at your skyrocket best? Everybody has a skyrocket best period of time. Generally, we're doing the not
I'm about
the best things.
4 p.m.
Okay, some people see me.
I'm a leader.
I'm a sleeper. You can rest assured I'm napping at 4 o'clock. I get up at 5:30. I am great from 7 to noon. By the time 1 o'clock comes and I've had lunch, oh, we are slowing down. And and then there are other people, like you're 4 o'clock. There are people that it's 11, 12 o'clock at night, but just identifying that time frame and saying in that time frame is when I will schedule this thing that I'm saying is so important to me. Okay? That one shift in what you automatically do can give you a greater potential to actually achieve it.
I like that. Yeah.
So getting right at your peak, if you will, is the best
and being
time.
respectful that your peak and my peak are different peaks.
And that's important, I think. We have to understand who we are, because I tell my clients that, we have to live that when it comes to health per lifestyle. All of our lifestyles are different, so our health, the way we manage our health should be different as well, too. And I agree with what you were just saying on that note.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of outside talk. There's this thing called the blame game. Mm-hmm. There's these excuses that are always in our head. Mm-hmm. Part of your workshop is helping to overcome that kind of stuff and get past those obstacles, correct?
Yeah. Again, and I wish I knew who I could actually attribute this piece of work to. I have a suspicion it may have been something out of Tony Robbins' work initially. It's called every time you explain anything to anybody, do it from the point of no shame, no blame, no rationalization.
I like that. No
okay?
Shame, no blame,
no rationalization. So let's see what that looks like.
Please.
You come 15 minutes late to a client meeting. What would you normally say?
I'm sorry. I was late. And then I would, normally in excuses given there was traffic, this, that, whatever.
Right.
That's not acceptable, though.
Well, what you want to do is, we are in the age of cell phones generally showing up late to a meeting we've texted or we've called. I mean, that is one that we've generally done.
Right.
But late for a deadline, you have a report due, and the report doesn't get done. You go in with 14 years worth of excuses of why it wasn't done, and all the person who wants the report wants to know is when. If you go in and say, I know I have not made this deadline, I am working on it now, you will have it in 4 hours or 2 weeks or whatever. They don't have to know that the cat threw up on the rug and that your mother was angry at you and there were 4 bus accidents and 3. They don't need any of it. What they care about, and they will become your champion because you have satisfied what they need. When am I going to get the report? Now, if you're habitually late because you smoke pot all afternoon and have a hard time getting the report done, it's not going to work.
Yeah, no, that's not a good
that's
reason
another
at all.
habit you want to look at.
Exactly.
Yeah. But that's how it works. No shame, no blame, no rationalization. People will be willing to hear because you're giving them the information they need that you haven't been able to give them so far.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And so with these excuses, what are some things in order to get past those blocks for some people that may be having these excuse issues? Because we're all inundated with negative talk out there from the time we go to the store, anywhere in society, in public. And then we start to somehow adopt that into our own thoughts and our own actions and what we do. For me...
Okay, let me pause you right there before you even get to that question.
Yes.
Because I want people to really respect what you've just said.
Please.
That negative talk out there. We go to all these places and we're collecting all this information. By the time, you even get to do anything, you've actually identified the problem.
Yes, and that's what I want to address is once you've identified and you're aware of it, and then after awareness is the taking action in order to be able to not let it affect you. And what are some tools or how does that work?
So the very first one, when you're noticing that things you're doing in the course of your day, you're around people who have negative, I actually was on a trip recently where I was stunned walking with a CEO who said the word hate more times in a minute than I thought it was possible. And it was, you start with your own language. If you are noticing that there is negativity, one of the things you can do in your mind where you're chattering to yourself because you're saying, oh my gosh, that person is so negative. Well, how about if I was looking at what they were saying, how I would say it is. Use your self-chatter to immediately reframe, because you're already acting superior that they're being negative. That's actually the first thing you got to clean up. We got to clean up our own house first.
Right.
Okay? That's why my work really is on the individual. Some people are really great at group stuff. My sweet spot is the individual. Every human I help clean up their own act, they multiply it with everyone they touch. So that's where my care is. So instead of noticing the negativity, if you begin to make a game in your own head of, oh, this is what I would say, or kid yourself like, oh boy, I think I'm so great, that I notice this negativity. You have to contribute. I have a habit, and sometimes it's not appreciated. You will say something negative, like, I really hate that person, and I will say, I think what you meant to say is that you would prefer not to do business with them. Now, between those that I play with, we can banter about that. Right. Because we both know that I have been corrective when I've done something like that.
I've done that same thing with my dad. My dad's kind of been the negative Nancy, so to speak, and I would always go in. I started actually teaching my dad some things that I learned from Michael Ozier, who did the law of attraction.
Yes.
Don't use the words don't, not, and no in your
Correct.
sentences, and you can reduce some of your talk.
Correct.
So I started using these different exercises, and he would do it to where he would allow me to correct him, and it got so much to the point where he was frustrated. He finally just started doing it to where he would put his own thoughts in instead of me formulating it in a positive way. Okay. And I think that's the hardest thing for people is you'll catch them saying something. I'll say, can you form that a different way? And you'll catch them right on the spot, and they can't form it a different way. They'll think of it 100 ways to Sunday. It's because they never started training their mind in order to think like that. So if they start just a little bit at a time, no matter what it is.
Okay, so you've tagged on to what we do in the workshops.
Oh,
it's all about recrafting. No, honestly, it's a moment-by-moment recrafting. And that's the hardest part of my work. There is no workshop that's going to make you better, me better, or anybody better. There is no workshop. There is a lifetime commitment to continually being aware and being willing to shift who you are, what you hear, how you speak. It changes everything.
Yes, yes.
Okay? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
All right, and on that note there, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Thank you for listening to the Luminosity Wellness Radio. Welcome back to Luminosity Wellness Radio. We're here with our special guest, Andrea Giglin.
Gigline, yes.
Gigline. I'm getting better with it.
You're getting better. This is good.
By the end of the interview
It
here,
comes
I
with
will
a great.
be
The
done.
name came with a great man, so I just. Yep.
That's good.
Yep.
And I'm getting it confused. Your first name was somebody else because that's who I've known my whole life, and so I won't repeat it again.
No, you
but
will not
that's where
repeat
it's
that
hard
again.
for me to spit it out.
Okay.
So, but we've been hearing a lot of great things about your book.
Yep.
And also about your workshop that you're having.
Yep.
I wanted to ask one quick question because you did say most of the people that will come to your workshop is business oriented. But to me, the way it sounds is that this is a workshop that would be good for everybody in everyday life. Do you need to be business oriented to come, or can you come just to try to find how you can change your life in these ways?
I will tell you that knowing myself and knowing my work, business oriented means that's where you're spending the vast majority of your day. So if you are going to work at developing yourself, you have to have that framework as what does it look like? How do I behave? How do I think within that environment? Because that will give you the most ability to practice. It is not a marriage relationship. That's a great way for me to contrast it. Is this a place where you would come because it's going to be talking about the best way to have a marital relationship? No.
Okay, but just like to better yourself, then anyway. I don't want to use self-help there because of
personal development.
Personal development.
Yes.
So then let me ask you this. Do you think it would be even for somebody that might have a career working for somebody else, not really a business person in that end, is it going to help them on that aspect as well too?
The attribute is that you actually find part of your identity and like it in how you earn your income, or you don't feel it and you want to find it. You know that, we're an economic society. We're driven that way. You're trying to find the next career, the next job. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm not sure where I saw it, but me and Josh were looking over a bunch of videos and stuff that you have done. And I know with my clients, I talk about sometimes we can't change the things that happen within our lives. We just change the way our energy, the way our perspective is towards it.
Correct.
And so do you think with your workshop as well, too, somebody that might have struggles within their job but want to keep that job,
Absolutely.
It's going to help them clear that and change their perspective and energy on that?
Absolutely. That is, how you speak about the job you have, even if you dislike it, is one of the first things that you will look at. Because you're shifting your base language about how you speak about your job helps you open up your own way and mind of thinking of how do I make this work? I know this is not, there's a joke in the romance community. He was he was the right guy, just not Mr. Right.
Or right now.
Yeah, right. And that's one of the things that we have to be respectful of. We tend to demonize those things that are annoying us. We must stop that.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And what a great place to start at is work, because so many of us, and this is something I like to say, is we live life by default. And, we start out in our early 20s and somebody's like, hey, I got to know somebody that has a job. You want this job? And you take the job. And next thing you know, 20 years later, you're not in a position where you want to quit anymore. So now all of a sudden you're not liking your job. You're hating life. And how can I get out of this without losing my job and totally changing my career? And I think that's a beautiful thing because it's just the way we change our energy. And if we can change the way we feel about work, then we go home happier, and that everything changes.
And this is where that no shame, no blame, no rationalization. If you think that it is someone you're working with who makes your job miserable, just changing your perspective towards them and staying really clean on how your thought, one of the most fun things of acknowledging is when there are people that we don't particularly like at work, we have ways of avoiding them. And our brains, whether we know it or not, as the person is walking down the hall, the pure fear that they may come in your office, you're already trying to say, oh no, I don't want this person to be talking to me. I better be doing this. I better be looking the other way. Well, you're spending a lot of time making yourself miserable.
Yeah.
That person is only walking down the hall, and you've spent all those seconds processing, oh no, let me get away from this person right now.
And most likely they're not even thinking about you. They're thinking about what project they're working on.
And that is the self-centered nature of our egos.
Exactly.
Everybody, they're all thinking about me. They're looking at the way I dress. They're looking at the way I speak. They're looking at the car I drive. Do you really think that's what everybody else is paying attention to?
No, I know my thoughts. I mean, most of us, we're thinking about what they're thinking about us, not what we're thinking about them as well. And so, I think that's a twisted cycle that a lot of us have for sure.
Yeah.
So I see that this lies a lot in people's passion. I mean, in order to continue going to work and doing what you do, you have to have a passion for it. Do you help develop that in the workshop?
Okay, I don't work much with passion. I work solely with strengths.
Strengths, okay.
Because in the basis of positive psychology, what they found in their research was that if you identify the top 5 natural strengths that you have and then craft your days and the things you have to do where you can begin to notice where you are using those strengths. Over lunch today, I had the opportunity to speak to someone about authenticity. That happens to be one of my strengths. Happened to be one of the strengths of the person I was speaking with. We were talking about how certain aspects of a job can be challenging if in fact you're being asked to sell harder on something, then you actually feel okay. You're like, the gimmick, it just doesn't feel right. So you think you don't like the job, but actually it's the way you're presenting information that you don't like. It's going against your own internal sense of authenticity. So all you have to do is begin to position something in a way that you are comfortable. So for me, I work in the strengths. You start knowing your strengths really well, you will then begin to feel how good work can feel or how good interactions can feel. Something feels good, we do more of it. It's a habit that we, like it's one of those very subtle things. That felt good, it's why we overeat. The first bite tastes good, I bet the 10th one's going to be a lot better, but that's the kind of thing. What you're trying to do is get that feeling in your body of, wow, I did that well. That's actually a sense of self-esteem, a sense of self-love, and that's what everything's about in the Don't Die Waiting to Be Brave. It's about valuing, first and foremost, your own self-worth, self-love, and how it generally takes a lifetime of small, brave actions in order to have that happen.
Well, and I like we should, small actions. And that's what it takes. We don't have to worry about, oh my God, I want to change the world, I got to do something big. No, changing the world can start with one small action, just smiling at the people you walk by every day. And that's what it takes, just that small basic action, and then you start doing it and keep cultivating it and having that grow. And the next thing you know, you found that love for yourself again, that happiness and that passion. Yeah,
comparing ourselves to others who have more is actually one of the worst things to your goal achievement. When you center yourself in reproducing internally those self-scores that it feels good. When I do this kind of work, I feel really good, and stop projecting out how someone else is doing it, then you will be far more satisfied.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you have to follow your own heart and not think you need to follow what somebody else is doing and get your happiness through their happiness. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
And earlier in the show, for those that may have just be joining in, we were actually talking about the book series.
Yes.
And we were talking about positive thinking. And the title of your book, well, not so much. Can you explain how you came up with Don't Die?
Well, to be very honest, I was one of the people, and I still do. I go around in certain teachings and show you how to take the don'ts and the can'ts and the won'ts all out of your language. And then I go about developing the Don't Die brand of inspirational books. Very, very intentionally. Because one, I wanted to be disruptive. I wanted you to actually feel uncomfortable initially. Anything that has to do with the word die generally will make you feel uncomfortable. And part of the reason is that we believe that death is the thing we're trying to avoid, and we put our attention on supposedly fear of death, when the real fear is that we aren't living our lives moment to moment. So the Don't Die brand is about owning full on living the Don't Die spirit. That every time, every breath you take, you're doing it from the standpoint of, I can be okay at the end of this. I can be okay at the end of this, good, bad, or indifferent.
So it's a great way to live in the moment, or learn to live in the moment if you don't know how.
Correct. And that was it. And I will tell you that the title Don't Die actually came from a client who became a friend, and she called me one day and she implored me, Andrea, please make me a promise that we won't die with vacation time on the books. And that was the very first book that I did. And you can now get it for free on my website, servingsuccess.com.
Did you say free?
Download free.
I think she said free.
You can get it free at servingsuccess.com. You can download it. It is a gift from me to anyone. And what she was telling me, this was a woman who had owned a business for 25 years, and twice in the last 18 months prior to that call, she had to pay vacation benefits into an employee's estate. And so her call to me was like, can we make a promise that we're not going to do that?
Oh, yeah.
We have to not die with vacation time on the books.
Yeah.
And that's where it honestly came from. And through that, I really recognized that that was the beginning of the conversation of how do I take responsibility that no matter when I die complete. Well, that goes to the moment-by-moment living. And so I got to the title and the brand in a rather circuitous fashion. Now, I do want to address one thing, because those of that follow my series